Acting President Yemi Osinbajo inaugurates an industrial policy and competitiveness council to further drive government's policies on revamping the economy.
House of Representatives passes for second reading a bill to amend the national minimum wage.
Nigerian Air Force component of Operation Lafia Dole intensifies clearance operations in the northeast, destroying vital Boko Haram installations.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, Information Minister speaks on 2 years of the Buhari administration, plus Nigeria's creative industry in the last 2 years.
The Muhammadu Buhari administration came into power 2 years ago with so many expectations from Nigerians. The halfway mark of the regime is a mixed bag of success and difficulties.
Well, the two biggest successes of the President Muhammadu Buhari administration have been the war against Boko Haram, as well as, of course, its aggressive fight against corruption.
Unfortunately, Kingsley, President Muhammadu Buhari's 2 years in office is perhaps the most difficult in the country's economic history. It was the period the country's economy slumped into recession for the first time in more than a decade.
Well, Kieran, you will agree with me that, as we pointed out in the earlier editions of the program, which focused on the 2 years of the current administration as well as 18 years of democracy, that the challenges that led to the current economic situation had started well before President Muhammadu Buhari took his oath of office 2 years and 2 days ago.
Yes, we recall that the country's foreign reserve, which stood at $40.6 billion in 2014, when crude price was about $110 per barrel, had plunged drastically by March 2015 to about $31 billion. At that time, crude price had dropped to about $48 per barrel. But in spite of this, Nigeria's import bill had risen to about 790 billion naira by 2015.
Now, to address this situation, the government targeted the various structural causes of the economic challenges by releasing over 770 billion naira in the 2016 fiscal appropriation for capital projects in key sectors of the economy.
And another amount of over 400 billion naira was also released to kickstart a well-coordinated four-pronged social intervention programs designed to impact the lives of the very poor and vulnerable segments of the population.
Now, there was also a cocktail of other creative initiatives and policies by the administration to deal with the knotty problems of reflating the economy and improving the living conditions of Nigerians. Now, some of these policies, of course, include the phasing out of subsidy regimes for petroleum products and fertilizers, as well as the prohibition of 41 items from enjoying foreign exchange allocation from the official window.
And mixed reactions, however, still through a performance of the administration, as many advise the government to adjust its economic policies by checking multiple foreign exchange rates, fix the nagging problem of power, and invest more in youth empowerment.
All right, now in the first leg of our current conversation on the 2 years of the Buhari administration, we shall be joined by the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Olajilai Mohammed, to answer to these questions and more with regard to the performance of the Buhari administration.
And as Kingsley said, we shall continue the dialogue on the second anniversary of the Buhari administration with a spotlight on the creative industry of the economy, which in recent past contributed immensely to the rebasing of Nigeria's economy and with great potential diversification of the economy.
Now, while the creative industry witnessed remarkable growth under the immediate past administration, the present government has consistently also shown steady interest in the sector. Now, this is most evident and the wide consultations by the Ministry of Information and Culture with stakeholders in the industry, and of course the convocation of a tourism and culture summit. Of course, there is a firm promise to implement the recommendations arising therefrom.
Although private distributors have made good money buying and trading in Nollywood movies, it is only in recent years that the true commercial potential of the industry became clear to policymakers and big businesses.
And also, over the past few years, the fashion industry has been attracting designers from around the world. Contemporary arts from Nigeria have been dominating exhibitions abroad, and Nigerian musicians too are also performing worldwide.
That's great indeed. And according to PricewaterhouseCoopers 2016 to 2020 Entertainment and Media Outlook, the Nigerian music industry will pull in an estimated revenue of 51 billion US dollars, about 16 billion naira from various platforms by 2017, reaching an expected sum of 86 million US dollars, 27 billion naira by 2020. Indeed, the Nigerian music industry is also expected to grow year in, year out till the year 2020, which with a digital sales taking over physical sales.
Now, on the recovery of some of the nation's artifacts, a couple of days ago, the Information Minister also oversaw the repatriation of the Nok Terracotta Act, which, of course, were returned by the French authorities. Now, some analysts say that this has brightened hopes that other Western countries may indeed follow suit. Of course, we know that there are a number of Nigerian artifacts that are being exhibited in various museums, including the famous Lady Idia mask, which lies in an underground cell somewhere in the British Museum in London. So, what are the additional efforts of the Buhari administration to enhance the potentials of the arts and culture subsector in the country? And what are also the collaborative efforts and support from other stakeholders in the sector? These and other questions we shall, of course, seek to provide answers to in the second aspect of our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of the program.
And I am Kirian Umayo, joining Kingsley to also welcome you to the program, coming to you from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, Africa's largest television network. In the course of the program, we shall bring you companion segments of business, entertainment, sports, foreign, and the weather outlook. For now, let's join Larry Bala Hassan for the news. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria, and a warm welcome to the news. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo has inaugurated an Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Council to further drive its policies on revamping the economy.
Able to put policy to test and policy to examination so that there is a process by which the private sector is able to contribute to implementation of policy, but more importantly also to developing those policies, because we think that is absolutely important that we are all on the same page, especially where it comes to some of the very important policies that we think will drive the growth that we expect and will drive the industrialization efforts that we expect.
Meanwhile, Acting President Yemi Osinbajo has signed into law 2 bills from the National Assembly that will ultimately facilitate access to more affordable credits for Nigerians. A statement by Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Office of the Vice President, Laolu Akonde, says the bills, which have now become acts, are the Secure Transactions in Movable Assets Act 2017, otherwise known as Collateral Registry Act, and the Credit Reporting Act 2017. With the passage of the acts, the existing Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) guideline regulating the operations of the National Collateral Registry and Credit Bureau have now been replaced by formal legal frameworks. These acts would facilitate the achievement of the goals of the Presidential Business Environment Council set up by President Muhammadu Buhari in July 2016 and chaired by the acting president to progressively make Nigeria an easier place for businesses to start to thrive. The House of Representatives has passed for second reading a bill for an act to amend the national minimum wage. The bill basically provides for a compulsory periodic review of the national minimum wage every 5 years.
As of today, There is no law that compels or mandates the government to review salaries.
Minimum wage is reviewed periodically.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it.
The Senate is to set up an ad hoc committee to investigate deals concerning maintenance of the Port Harcourt refinery. The decision followed a motion on non-transparent transaction sponsored by Senator Sabo Muhammad, representing Jigawa South. In the motion, Senator Sabo noted that while the resolve by the federal government to increase local refinery capacity is laudable, observance of corporate governance principle and extant laws must be followed up.
In partnership with Owando, without recourse to due process is illegal and a clear attempt at ridiculing Nigerians and will definitely create a big hole that will be hard to fill in the anti-corruption crusade of the present administration.
The senators also agreed that all processes and transactions on the deal should be put on hold until the proposed ad hoc committee completes its work. Nigeria and Russia have agreed in the United Nations to eliminate instability in Africa. This is one of the decisions at the bilateral meeting between the Nigerian delegation, led by Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister Geoffrey Onyema, and his Russian counterpart.
We found it particularly instructive that on many very important issues, there was really a meeting of minds. As you know, the relationship between Russia and Nigeria goes back a very long way and has always been very, very good, very warm indeed. And you know, Russia has really stood by Nigeria from the moment of independence.
And turning our attention now to security matters, the Nigerian Air Force has continued to intensify clearance operations in the northeast region. The Air Force component of Operation Lafia Dole conducted an intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance mission in Borno State. During the ISR mission, a large structure with solar panels and flags suspected to harbor high-value Boko Haram terrorists was discovered alongside other similar structures hidden under trees. Subsequent battle damage assessment revealed that several structures in the target area were engulfed in fire. As a result of the strikes, and a few Boko Haram terrorist survivors were seen scampering from the location. Also in the statement by the Director, Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Olatukumbo Adesonya says NAF helicopter gunships have also destroyed hidden barges with stolen oil products in several creeks within the Niger Delta under the framework of Operation Delta Safe. The destruction of the barges is aimed at making the stealing of the nation's oil products futile, dangerous and unattractive. The Federal Ministry of Defense has commenced the process of review and amendment of the Armed Forces Act 2004. Defense correspondent Ismail Musa reports that the Minister of Defense, Mansour Dang Ali, flagged off the procedure in Abuja through a constitutional committee.
While the laws from which the Armed Forces of Nigeria copied her own laws has undergone several reviews reflective of the ever-changing status of the world, ours has remained stagnant, regardless of the dynamics of the change in society.
Departure from the current cooperative federalism of several decades to physical federalism that will address the challenges of regional inequalities and ensure a balancing of equity and efficiency is a gradual constitutional process and not a product of agitation, as is currently the case. Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, stated this in Abuja while declaring open a one-day think tank conference put together by the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies.
It requires amending the Constitution to accommodate referendum, or in the alternative, a constitutional amendment to the 1999 Constitution, which in this case must be supported by majority of legislators in 24 states of the Federation.
The wife of the president, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, Tuesday morning left Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, for London, United Kingdom. Mrs. Buhari is going to UK to visit her husband, President Muhammadu Buhari, who is on medical vacation. State House correspondent Aliyu Kabir reports that the wife of the president expressed appreciation to Nigerians for their support and prayers for the president, who is resting according to his doctor's orders. And that's the news for now. Kirian and Kingsley will return after this break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
So what's up, sweetheart? You really look like you're up to something.
I have a secret.
Okay.
I'll be going to Europe next week.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Like you have your visa, your passport, your plane ticket?
No, not that way. Some men are helping us. We pay them, they take us through the desert, and then we cross the sea into Europe.
The desert, the sea. Isn't that the route where many have died?
Yes, it is indeed a very dangerous journey. In 2016 alone, 4,900 people died while crossing the Mediterranean Sea to enter Europe. Many were Nigerians. For the very few who survived the journey, they are forced into prostitution or other crimes just to survive. Eventually, they will be arrested and deported to Nigeria. Don't be a victim. Don't go this way.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Federal government assures of self-sufficiency in sugar production as the Nigerian Stock Exchange sustains bullish run. Business news next with Leah Kautung Babatunde.
Hello, and this is Good Morning Nigeria Business News. Now, the federal government has affirmed it is prepared to support genuine investors to succeed in the country. This affirmation was given by the Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Aisha Abubakar, who said government is determined to ensure self-sufficiency in sugar production. She said the Sugar Master Plan was being pursued vigorously to ensure its full implementation, noting that in a short while Nigeria will no longer import sugar for local consumption but will rather focus on export.
They understand what it is for investors to come in. And this is a time when Nigeria needs to have investors, particularly in agriculture, because we have the land and we have the fertile resources that we can grow most things.
Executive Secretary to the National Sugar Development Council, NSDC, Dr. Lateef Busari, while responding to the submission by the minister, said they're keen into the 10-year Sugar Master Plan.
We will need about 28 different factories of varying capacities to produce the sugar. And then we will come up with new guidelines going into the second half of the, because by January next year, we'll be into the second half of the master plan implementation.
He called on companies in the industry to scale up corporate social responsibilities to impact positively on their host communities for speedy development. Now, the Nigerian stock market continued to soar as the bulls remained dominant in the first official trading day of the week. The all-share index gained by 0.73% to 29,276.59 points, and the market capitalization closed at 10.121 trillion naira. 832 million equities were traded in 6,259 deals valued at 7.591 billion naira. Diamond Bank traded a whopping 194 million equities to top the trade chart and was trailed by distant champion breweries and Guaranty Trust Bank. Axim and Third, FBN Holdings and Cement Company of Northern Nigeria led gainers in percentage terms, while the Reds were led by Supply Petroleum, 7up, and Nigeria Animal Wear. Oil prices took a further hit on Tuesday, reflecting disappointment among traders that OPEC and its allies agreed to only extend but not deepen production costs to drain the market of excess inventories. Some of the world's biggest producer countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia last week agreed to curb supplies for a further 9 months into 2018 in an effort to end an oil market downturn that has entered its third year. Prices had risen ahead of last Thursday's Vienna meeting of ministers, with hedge funds closing out many of their bearish bets on oil. When ministers merely offered an extension of the current deal, prices fell by 5%. They rebounded slightly, but then came under renewed pressure on Tuesday. And that is business news for this hour. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much there, Leah Katumba Batunde, for the business package. And Good Morning Nigeria today. Of course, next for us now, we move ahead to take a look at the headlines on the front pages of some of the papers we have with us this morning.
And our newspaper reviewer, Omini Oden, is here in the studio. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, Omini.
It's my pleasure. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Let me begin with the Daily Trust. The headline on Daily Trust this morning is Buhari's anti-corruption bill scales Senate's hurdle. The rider process pending in House of Representatives. Now, above the nameplate, we have Oshibajo, Dangote, others in Industrial Policy Council. The full story is on page 3. And below the photo story here, we have elder statesman Chris Abashia for burial today. Now, Reps quiz Adoshu Fashola over procurement breaches. Page 3 has the details of that report, including 2.19 billion lost to payment fraud in 2016. The banks actually lost a lot of money to fraudsters in Nigeria in 2016, and the story is also on page 3. That's all about this.
All right, let's take a look at the front page of This Day newspaper. This Day has as its lead story the inauguration of the Competitiveness Advisory Council. It says, Oshibajo inaugurates Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Advisory Council. It also signs 2 new laws to ease access to affordable loans by SMEs. That's right to that. Now, the photograph on the front page there also has a caption. It says, after initial rejection, private sector is eased back into government. Now, these are some of the country's industrial heavyweights who were present at the inauguration of the Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Advisory Council yesterday. Also on the front page there, we have the headline, Buhari's wife, Aisha, departs for London to join husband. And the writer, my relationship with president is cordial, says Saraki, who is Senate president. Now, above the name flag of This Day newspaper, there are 2 headlines. One says 23 banks got 28.7 billion naira inflows from dubious MMM transactions. That's a Ponzi schemes. 23 banks got 28.7 billion naira inflows from dubious MMM transactions. And First Rider says subscribers lost 12 billion naira, and Emefiele and others seek effective enforcement of Cybercrime Act. Also there on the front page, Senate seeks to halt plant concession of Port Harcourt refinery. Details of that story can be found on page 13. A minute.
Yes, you remember in Q1, we had 0.52, and from the indices given by the CBN and the economic advice to the government, said it was a beautiful indication that the economy is building up and is really coming out of recession. With the development yesterday, the inauguration of the Industrial Policy and Competitive Council to further drive home the policy of revamping the economy. This is one way to give vent and life to the private sector to really drive the economy. And with this, followed side by side is the bill signing into law, which will become an act now by the acting president, which will ultimately facilitate access to more affordable credits for Nigerians, mostly SMEs. And it will further give strength to what CBN is doing, which means there's hope for Q2. By the time, if these policies are sustained and these environments are given a congenial atmosphere to thrive, then Q2 we may end up really proving that the economy is out of recession. So it's a good indication for the economy.
Not so fast, as other experts have said. We discussed the economy yesterday, by the way. I mean, the indications are that perhaps by the end of the third quarter, we might begin to see much.
I'm even looking at Q2.
Yes. No, Q2 is coming to a close.
Okay, just yesterday, the 82 just released Chibok girls are finally been handed over to the Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development for further profiling, and this time around they may end up maybe being put in schools, like what the minister has said, that all of them were okay, they have been certified okay, and hope rising for them. Very soon they will fully join their families. Then the Presidential Advisory Committee Chairman against Anti-Corruption, Professor Sage, yesterday followed suit with what MBA said, that there is need for the court judgment or court orders to be respected with regards to the former National Security Advisor and the Shiite leader to be released, in as much as they will still restrict them, but they should be given that picture that the present government recognizes and abides by the rule of law.
That's in accordance with the rule of law.
Yes, very well.
Incidentally, what Umene is saying, that's the lead story, by the way, for the Punch newspaper. If we can see that right now on the screen. Punch newspaper, that's what it lists with. Obey court orders on Dasuki and Ezagzaki. Sage tells federal government. Now, there are other headlines there. One of them, at least we've read already, of the president's wife joining him in London. And one feared dead as police and navy clash in Calabar. And Oshibajo signs bills to ease MSMEs access to credit. Of course, that has to do with secure credit transaction, which Umene was discussing earlier. You know, micro and small and medium-scale enterprises always had a challenge of providing sufficient or even credible collateral to access facilities. If we return to the front page of the Punch, above the photograph, below the photograph on the front page, you have a window of other headlines that you will find there. Of course, those are the photographs of the recently released Chibok girls who, of course, are undergoing rehabilitation by the federal government. Now, what banks also lost their 2.19 billion naira to fraudsters. Kirian already read that. And then no provision for soldiers killed in battle. That's according to Oloni Shaki. Oloni Shaki, of course, is the chief of defense staff. Wife sets husband and self ablaze over alleged infidelity. Aferi Ferrer and IYC kick as AGF says restructuring is tall order.
Okay, now let's go to the Blueprint newspapers and see what the paper is saying today. Well, we know that some of the stories we have read so far may appear in some other newspapers. Now look at Blueprint. Reps seek mandatory 5-year minimum wage review. That's on page 4. And then on the left side, how Bauchi spends 4 billion naira on salaries monthly. That says Abubakar. And now, Ekweremadu's house raid. Court remands whistleblower in prison. That's some of the stories making headlines in Blueprint. And towards the right, we have DSS hands over 82 Chibok girls to Women Ministry, as Omine has already analyzed. And now the headline story is finally, Senate passes Buhari's anti-graft bill, stops $15 billion Port Harcourt Refinery concessioning. That's on page 6 of Blueprint. Now, I mean, you would want to come in here. I wanted to make comment on these MMM transactions. I don't know whether you read details.
Well, I was not really involved in the transaction, but what interests me this morning is the move by the National Assembly to come up with a law to back up the mandatory review of minimum wage. If there was a law backing it up, we would not have had the issue of maybe Labour saying review. Government would have known that there's a law in place. And if this law is passed, it therefore means truly every 5 years, the workers in Nigeria will know that they are due for a new minimum wage.
Already, I think there's a committee set up by the current administration. That committee.
And the National Assembly is to back up, come up with a law.
Yes, but the committee came before the. Well, this is just one leg.
Yes.
Of the passage process.
What happened to the businessman that was brought before the magistrate court yesterday is another lesson for those who are applying to whistleblow. You need to be very sure of your information before you whistleblow, because he has landed himself in trouble again. Because
some of them
let the promise by government of a percentage not make you move too fast. Watch before you move. And yesterday in Calabar, by this morning, it has been confirmed by the papers that 3 persons have been confirmed dead. There's a row between the Navy and the police. There's a road called IBB Way in Calabar. You have the Navy barracks and what they call the Akim police station. There was a misunderstanding which brought about a reprisal attack. And
the people that...
Yeah. 3 persons have been confirmed.
We'll stop you there. We'll stop you there as time cannot allow us to go further on that. We'd like to thank you for your review this morning. I mean, you're Dan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. When we return, we'll move into conversations for this morning's show.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh Gerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Introducing the new 5 Alive Pulpy Orange.
Where is the pulp? The pulp. Where is the pulp? Where is the pulp?
Taste the goodness of real orange pulp in every gulp.
Where is the pulp?
The new 5 Alive Pulpy Orange, now in your neighborhood.
All right, welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, we have 2 items for discussion today. We have the pleasure of having the program this morning the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who of course will be discussing various aspects of the 2 years of the Buhari administration, 2 years and 2 days already. Honorable Minister, it's our pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and Kirian, of course, let's begin. We've been on this for well over a week now, discussing 18 years, first of democracy, as well as 2 years of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. Let's begin, by taking a look at self-assessment. What, in your opinion, and indeed the opinion of the administration, have been the successes in 2 years?
Well, I think our opinion is that we've done pretty well in 2 years, and that we're very much on course. Our focus had been on 3 major issues. That's fighting insecurity, fighting corruption, and revamping the economy. And I know that it's the conventional wisdom is to say, oh, the government has succeeded very much in the area of fighting insecurity. They've succeeded very much in the area of fighting corruption, but that they've not done very well in the area of fighting the economy. And I disagree slightly with this, because it appears that in making such evaluation, people are not taking into context or not looking holistically into what the economy was and what the government has done so far to put the economy back on track. And I'll start with the recession. Now, neither here nor there, the country was primed to get into recession. But the important is that throughout 2016, 29 subsectors of the economy was in recession. But by the first quarter of 2017, we've almost halved, it was almost half that. And today, as we speak, only 16 subsectors of the economy is in recession. The first quarter of 2016, for instance, manufacturing was -7%. First quarter of 2017, the same manufacturing is 1.36%. Despite the lean resources and the lean revenue, been able to accrue to the foreign reserve about $7 billion. Be able to attract about $250 million to the sovereign wealth fund. And at the same time, we've been able, $500 million to the sovereign wealth fund. And at the same time, we'll be able to increase the crude excess account by $87 billion. And then when you look into specific areas of the economy and what the government has done to block leakages, what the government has done to ensure that we don't sink further, then you'll be able to appreciate that we've done a lot in the area of even fixing the economy. But I think as the conversation proceeds, I'll be able to go into specific areas of job creation, of inclusive growth, what we have achieved in agriculture, what we have achieved in infrastructure, whether transportation, roads, rails, and the rest.
All right, sir. From the feedback that you get from Nigerians as information minister, what are Nigerians actually saying about this administration with respect to what they have achieved? You have reeled out some of the achievement, and you said in the course of the conversation we'll go into some more details. But what are Nigerians saying?
You see, what Nigerians are saying is that there is hardship. What Nigerians are saying is that there's unemployment. What Nigerians are saying is that the price of food is high. And I think to a large extent, yes, some of this feedback is true. But what is important, and we keep telling Nigerians must appreciate that, it could have been much worse than this. But for the single-mindedness, commitment of this administration to rescue the economy. And I will start with the issue of unemployment or jobs. Now, yes, when we came in, about 24 state governments were unable to pay staff salaries. Federal government came in immediately, we bailed out funds. Now, we set ourselves a very ambitious social intervention program. It's the biggest so far in the history of this country. It has resulted in one fell swoop of employing about 200,000 unemployed graduates. These unemployed graduates today, who are now, doing what we call volunteer service under the, Empower, work as teachers, they work as, agricultural extension, workers. They work also as in the health in the public health institution. Now, but you see, in the history of Nigeria, no one government has ever, in one fell swoop, employed or cleared from the employment market that number of graduates. And to show Nigerians that we're not just talking about figures and statistics, they were all assembled 2 days ago. So their representatives were assembled 2 days ago at the villa. Now, because we knew also that some of the steps and measures we are going to take will necessarily bring some hardship, we also initiated the conditional cash transfer, which is trying to reach the most vulnerable Nigerians. And I speak today, over 26,000 Nigerians receive regularly every month 5,000 naira. And then there's the JEEP, which is the government, enterprise and empowerment program, which today has granted 57,000 interest-free loans to over 26,000 people who come from various cooperatives. And of course, there's also the 1 meal a day, which is part of the program this government has, initiated to cushion the effect of this, recession. And as I speak today, over 1 million people all over Nigeria enjoy free meals. We've served to date over 25 free meals. It has also created, employment for about 12,000 cooks. Now, these are things we have done to cushion the effect. When you go to agriculture, between the central bank borrowers, anchor borrowers program, and the Ministry of Agriculture's, new soil map, which, helps, farmers to know what kind of fertilizer to apply, we've boosted local production of rice and other grains. And today, 1 hectare of land that normally yield 2 tons of grains, is now yielding up to about 7 tons of grains.
Honorable Minister, let's take a look at again what some commentators have indicated, that namely, it is only now, according to them, that they are saying the administration gained momentum and therefore altitude, that it had a slow start. Was the administration jolted by what it meant and then what it had to do?
No, clearly what we met was not what we expected. But again, you see, like I say, diversification is not Nescafe that you just put in water and then, hot water and then you take. Now, it takes time to plan. And it takes time for these plants to germinate. Take, for instance, the infrastructural, sector. When we came in 2015, for instance, the combined Ministry of Works, Power and Housing, was owing over 1.7 trillion to contractors. And we had to clear this mess. And when you look at what we achieved between 2016, when we started operating the 2016 budget, and today, it's phenomenal, even if I say so. And I'll give you the figures. The year 2015, 18 billion naira only was spent on roads. In 1 year, we spent 260 billion naira on roads. 2015, 5 billion naira also only was spent on power. 2016-2017, we spent 99 billion naira. Ditto for housing, 1.8 billion was spent on housing. 2016-17, we spent 70 billion naira on housing. When you look at jobs created, even from this infrastructure area, in power, we created 9,000 direct jobs and 60,000 direct jobs. In housing, we created 14,000, direct jobs and 42,000 direct jobs. And in road, we created 17,000 jobs and 50,000 direct jobs. And in the process, we've empowered 542 local contractors. Now, I can go to agriculture, like I said. In 2015, we imported 580,000 metric tons of rice. In 2016, this came down to 58,000 metric tons. Still on agriculture, when we came in, the fertilizer program was very opaque, not transparent, and it was not even affordable by farmers. We introduced the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, through which, in cooperation between us and Morocco, we got discounted phosphate from Morocco. We mix it with our own local urea, and today we have 11 blending plants operating all over Nigeria, as against the 5 that we inherited. And today, farmers can get, fertilizer for 30% less than they used to get it.
About 5,500.
500, yes.
As against 10,000.
As 8,000, 10,000. In addition, this has resulted in a savings of over $200 million in foreign exchange and 60 billion naira in budgetary provision. Now, you see, so when people want to judge us on our economic performance, they should please look at where we are coming from and where we are at the moment.
And I'm still talking about people's judgment. Now looking at the APC government, what it has achieved in 2 years against the backdrop of huge expectations of Nigeria. Remember that when this government came to power, there was this euphoria. I mean, people were jumping at it. I said, look, we are going to have it better from today. Are you satisfied, that with what you have done so far, with respect to meeting people's expectations, based on how you came in and how you were welcomed?
No, clearly the expectation was very huge. And I think at several points, during our campaign, Mr. President was quite worried and concerned that this expectation is so huge. How are we going to meet the expectation? Now, but you see, I take one thing, and I think Nigerians should appreciate this, that as the president was being sworn in on 29th of May 2015, almost 1/3 of the entire northeastern state and northeastern part of Nigeria was under the effective control of Boko Haram. In 2015, when we were being sworn in, not even Abuja here was safe. I know what precautions will be taken when we are going to mosques and going to churches. Now, that this government has been able to defeat, and I've used the word very advanced, defeat the Boko Haram insurgency.
Some military experts say degrade.
No, military experts say defeat. Some civilians say degrade. And I use the word defeat, and I will tell you why I say defeat later. Now, the fact that Nigeria is safe for all, I think, is the biggest achievement of this administration. That we're here today, good morning Nigeria, is because the country is safe. And if you look at what it used to be, May 29, 2015, 20 out of 27 local governments in Borno State were under the effective control of Boko Haram. 4 in Adamawa State, about 3 in Yobe State. Not even parts of Gombe was safe. And we're talking about, insurgents that actually established themselves, had their flags, had their administration, had their courts. I was one of the early, early visitors to Kauri, Konduga, and Bama in December 2015, and I saw the carnage, the scale of the carnage, and I saw the effectiveness of this Boko Haram. But today, the spiritual and operational headquarters of Boko Haram, which they call Ground Zero, has been taken over completely. And that's why I said defeat. And a few months ago, the Nigerian army conducted this small arms championship to really prove the point that they are dominating the area and they have defeated Boko Haram. Now, so when people say expectation, oh yes, but it's because there's a country first, that there's an economy. So we have been able to secure the territorial integrity of Nigeria, which was breached before we came. And now, from there, we can now build on the economy.
Indeed. One other aspect that some observers have also talked about, where in this country they say we solve one problem, another problem rears its head. Boko Haram, of course, has been defeated, as you say, and others, as I indicated, said degraded. Of course, they are no longer as effective as they used to be.
Yeah.
But we have seen a spike in the activities of herdsmen clashing with farmers and various other places. And some say that, look, this might have an impact on the nation's food security. How well has the administration come to grips with, the sudden rise of herdsmen who had previously been in the system without the kind of, activities we have seen them engage in recent times?
You see, every country would battle with different security challenges, and no part of the world is safe. As you could see what happened in Manchester just about a week ago. Sure. Now, but the important thing is, what is the capacity and the political will of government to address these issues? And this is the most important thing. And this government has the capacity and has the political will. But don't forget that herdsmen, farmers clashes, it's not the same thing as Boko Haram, which you could say, look, this is insurgency. Right. Now, these are social, political problems which must handle delicately. And I'm happy that at the local level, this matter is being addressed, because it's about peaceful cohabitation. It's about what happened. Why were we were living peacefully before? What certainly has happened. But another dimension to this is the fact that we have what I call a kind of influx of deadly, armed, herdsmen who come from other parts of the country. And because of the ECOWAS protocol that allows for free movements of
other parts of Africa.
Yeah, yes, other parts of Africa. Because of the ECOWAS protocol that allows for free movement of goods and passages, we have this challenge. And that's why the Minister of Agriculture said, we are tabling this matter at the next ECOWAS meeting, at the next AU meeting, that we are not going to allow, bandits, from other parts of Africa, just in the name of, ECOWAS protocol, to come and, cause mayhem in Nigeria.
Okay, another point, Karen, I was just going to say, just before, before you comment, you talked about what the government has spent on various sectors, including power, for instance, clearing the backlog of debts that the administration owed. I'm sure that you have heard this from Nigerians, that, look, one of the major challenges that the economy continues to face is power.
Yeah.
And we have had all kinds of things, whether what went up before in terms of the restructuring of the power sector was right or otherwise. What is it that the government has not been able, as some people say, deal with the power monster, and what has been done in this regard?
A lot has been done, in this regard. I'm happy that you also understand that by the time we came in, the power sector had been privatized largely. That's both the distribution and GENCO, and the distribution generation. The only thing that we have today, which has been contracted, I think, is the transmission. Yeah. But what are challenges that is facing the power, the power industry? Largely, it is liquidity problem. We've been unable to resolve the issue of, payment of, what is owed generating companies to gas producers. And once gas producers are not paid, then there will be no generation. If there's no generation, there will be no distribution. So what has the government done? In recent times, the government has, put in place what we call payment assurance program. By that, we have injected 701 billion naira into the value chain to ensure that we will resolve the liquidity problems between the gas producers and the generating companies, while we are looking holistically at the issue of the distribution companies. 2, the government has signed 13 power purchase agreements with 13 solar companies, and this is going to add an additional 1,000 megawatts. In June this month, this agreement is going to be signed. Now, three, we have the Water Resources Ministry through three dams. It's also working on additional 2,500 megawatts of power, and the NNPC also is working to get power for it. So we appreciate the challenges, but we are facing squarely. And but most importantly is that only recently, I think in March, we unveiled the power sector recovery plan, and this has been endorsed by the World Bank. So we inherited a very bad situation. Some people have said, why don't you cancel the privatization program? We say, look, if you do that, what kind of signal will you be sending to the investing community?
Yes.
So it's not as easy as people say, but the important thing is that we are determined, we are focused, and this is not even talk about the challenges we faced, with the restlessness and restiveness in the Niger Delta area, which made us lose at a point in time more than 1,000 megawatts of power as a result of disruption.
So Nigerians have noted that what has really been the issue with power is the aspect of distribution, which we may like to touch on as we proceed. But I'm going to the economic aspects of the administration. Well, we are still in recession. Although the indices from the Central Bank of Nigeria indicates that there is hope that we could get out of recession, perhaps by the third quarter of the year. Now, what really plunged the economy into this quagmire is what I'd like you to address now. What is the government policy, present policies, economic policies, really addressing the issues that brought us to the recession in the first place?
Yeah, you see, we don't like playing the blame game. But the truth of the matter is that the economic structure had been defective for more than 40 years. Because for more than 40 years, we concentrated on just one product, which is crude oil. And once you have a mono-product economy, any volatility in that product is bound to send shockwaves through the entire economy. This is why we have initiated the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which essentially puts emphasis on diversification of the economy. And the aim of this plan is to ensure that never again will Nigeria be held hostage by just one product. And what is the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan of Nigeria? It's simply to want to ensure that we get out of recession, there's economic growth, we invest in Nigerians, and we build a competitive economy. And this is hinged on 5 pillars. The first is that we're going to stabilize the microeconomic environment, to ensure that there's food and agricultural security. 3, ensure that we have power and energy sufficiency. 4, that transportation infrastructure is adequate. And lastly, that we provide an environment for the micro, small and medium enterprises to grow. And you can see what we've achieved already in these areas. If you look at what we've achieved in the area of ease of doing business, it's phenomenal, even if I say so. Now, for instance, only yesterday, the acting president signed into law 2 bills. One that will allow which we call collateral register, which allows people, small scale businessmen, rather than you who have no immovable assets, who have no houses, to go to financial institutions and take loans based on their movable assets or even their receivables. And then of course there's the credit bureau, which allows information sharing between financial institutions as to the credit rating of individuals and small companies. And why we're still talking about this, don't forget that we were able to, within 60 days, we were able to achieve 31 reforms against, across 8 sectors of the economy in the ease of doing business. And only recently, the acting president also signed into law executive orders that will ensure transparency in the business environment at the same time that we're going to promote, procurement, of, locally made goods. So in the area of the economy, we have done, we've taken initiatives, very bold ones at that, to ensure that we check the recession. And again, we must understand that our emphasis is paying off, because despite the recession, the solid minerals sector is growing at 7%, agriculture is growing at 4%, and like I said, even the manufacturing industry that suffered minus 7% negative growth in the first quarter of 2016 is out now by 1.36. It's now positively 1.36%. So the indices out there is that we are getting out of recession.
All right, so that's the point that the CBN itself has also talked about. Probably we'll be looking at the end of the third quarter. By the time the figures are from the National Bureau of Statistics, then we might have a clearer indication of how we are doing with regard to the economy. One other small point, in terms of the sustainability of the various measures and initiatives adopted by the administration with regard to the management of the economy. I mean, we saw yesterday, again, as these days reported on this front page, which was one of the stories we took in our newspaper review, the gradual, almost readmission of key players in the private sector into the management of the economy in terms of collaborative efforts. How sustainable are these measures being undertaken by the administration? Ease of doing business, as you indicated. I mean, we know that the Senate, of course, is also working on seeking to, either to amend or altogether revamp so-called obsolete laws with regard to doing business in the country. But how sustainable are these measures? Are these just reactions to the recession, or are these fundamental implants that will ensure that the economy continues to grow going forward?
You see, we had the choice of making quick fixes that will please everybody, and we refuse to take that road because it will go back to the same situation after a few months. Whatever we are doing is sustainable. For instance, every quarter we meet regularly with the private sector, and this provides a platform for us to interact, and then we correct what we are doing if it is wrong, and we listen to them. For instance, we have reviewed the 41 items on which the CBN said will not qualify for foreign exchange. We've put in place a tariff-driven policy in the area of tomato, for instance. Now, we've established what we call MSME clinics. These are clinics. Clinics where the management of government agencies such as Standard Organization of Nigeria, Corporate Affairs Commission, NAFDAC, who are the appropriate authorities, meet with the small businesses, and the two of them exchange views, and immediately they resolve problems such as giving approval. Now, in the area of ease of doing business, because this is like I said today, you can go, you don't need a lawyer now to register a company. You don't need to come to Abuja to check whether a name is available or not. You can upload your documentations online. Now we've modified our departure and arrival forms. We have a new visa on arrival policy, and we've reduced the number of documentations you need to import goods from 14 to 8, and those you need to to export from 10 to 7. Now, as for sustainability, it is very, very sustainable because it is work in progress, and we are continually engaging the private sector.
All right, sir. Now, let's come to administration, which is a function of human activities. And in the political realm, there are individuals who are championing the cause of administration. Now let's talk about unity among the political class. There seems to be some form of disunity among the political class, which of course truncated democracy in the past. Now, this is with a view to the fact that also many Nigerians are saying that the APC government has not gotten its acts together. Up to now, governance has been tough for the party and so on. Is that right?
I'm afraid I'm a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, so I'm not here to talk politics, whether intra or inter. I would rather, restrict myself to policies of government, how they affect people, and how,
Well, Honorable Minister, I must say it's inevitable, because at some point what is required is the management of the political economy. Part of what we have also said...
I'm going to talk about management of the political economy.
Yes.
I'm not going to talk about, the
disunity among the class.
No. You see, because that would be very unfair. I mean, number one, I'm a member of the party, but I'm here today as a government, spokesperson, and I would rather want to talk on government policy as they are affecting. Let politicians take care of the political, arena.
All right, well, Honorable Minister, this is the point. Managing the political economy. Social peace said is a predicate for production. And we have seen in recent times, a rise in agitation for restructuring. Some persons are calling for the implementation of some of the other recommendations of the National Political Conference. Others are saying power devolution. We saw what happened in most parts of the Southeast yesterday, and part of the calming of the nerves in the Niger Delta also came to that. How is the government responding to this? Because almost inevitably, you would have to get into the headwinds.
Speaking, I don't have a problem with that. Yes. You see, a government will decide and determine what its priorities are. And I think for us, this administration, our first priority was keeping Nigeria one. And this is what I've tried to explain about our fight against Boko Haram. What has been tried to explain in how we try to contain the herdsmen and farmers' clashes. And after that, once you are able to establish peace and harmony and cohesion, they now build up the economy. So I believe that in terms of order of priority, we've gotten it right, because we inherited an extremely fragile country, both in terms of political cohesion, in terms of territorial integrity, and in terms of a collapsed economy. So I think that right now our priorities are quite right.
Now, so you made a speech at the launch of Made in Nigeria goods, and I was privileged to be there. Now, what are the efforts the government is making to ensure that Nigeria begins to export, especially when it comes to Made in Nigeria products, and again to also make Nigerians want to buy products made in Nigeria? Because this the trend that many Nigerians prefer to buy products made outside this country. So how is government addressing that issue now?
I think one of the things we have done with the executive orders, which was signed into law by the executive orders signed by the acting president, is that we are giving preference and priority in the procurement process and the procurement in order to made in Nigeria products. But we also quite realize that unless made in Nigeria products are competitive, they will not be able to fly. And that is why we are concentrating so much on the ease of doing business. We are concentrating so much on the issue of infrastructure. We are concentrating so much on making sure that the micro, small and medium enterprises survive, because they contribute almost 50% of our GDP. And you see, infrastructure is the key. And this is where this government has taken some very giant strides. For instance, we've started, not only have we signed the contract for the 150 kilometers per hour rail, which is what we call the modern gauge between Lagos and Kano, but we have actually in earnest started the construction of the first tranche, which is the Lagos to Ibadan. we've been able to pay up our own 1.2 billion counterpart funding. We have signed an agreement with with General Electric, which is leading the consortium, to manage the 3,500 kilometers of narrow gauge rail. And once these are in place, then the industries would
we'll begin to pick up. Honourable Minister, just we're getting pressed for time now, at least for this segment of our conversation. The Nigerian Bar Association, in reviewing the second year anniversary of the current administration, said, look, the government should obey court orders. And just yesterday, Professor Ishe Sage, who chairs the Anti-Corruption Committee of the administration, added his voice to that call. Why are we saying, as they have said, that there appears to be lack of obedience to court orders?
Well, you see, I think this must be taken in the proper context. If a court order is given and you appeal against that court order, until that appeal is determined, you are not violating any law. Two, we also must look at, what I look at, the national security. At times also would weigh in. But generally, I believe that if there's an order, and which is what happens, and you obey, and you appeal that order, you are not in violation of any court order.
All right. Well, that's one leg of it. Now, the other leg, as they have also complained about, have been violation of human rights. I mean, they refer to what happened to the Shiites, and then, of course, IPOB last year and not this year. What is your response to those?
I think it's the same thing. I think it's the same answer. You see, number one, there's the issue of national security on the one hand, which you have to balance also with the human rights. And two, like you said, if there's an order of court and I appeal that order of court, you can't accuse me of violation of a court order.
All right. At this point, we have some tweets, from Nigerians who are watching this program, and the first one from here, Ahmed Gambo Ibrahim, he says, "Help us ask him what is the government doing to a bill that is supposed to create massive employment that is in the Senate." That's from Ahmed.
All right, we have this from Neil Diamond. Diamond Twist. The federal government is silent on the school children kidnapped in Ekpe, Lagos State. Why?
And Engineer Abula, he says, two things bedeviling Nigeria, security and corruption, are being faced and are getting the needed attention by PMB's administration. Comrade
Abiola has this tweet. I so much believe in this administration. They've performed well and they are still performing.
Now, from Engineer Abulahi, once again, if you think President Muhammad Buhari has not done anything, just ask the northeastern Nigeria's residents, especially the political ones.
All right, then we have this from Sunday Michael Amakwaji. Honorable Minister, where is the result of the many MOUs that have been signed by the President in the course of his travels?
And finally, from Festus Akimboyewa, lack of strategic thinking by Nigeria's leaders since independence is the reason for being in perpetual darkness and economic backwardness. Maybe the minister would like to respond to some of these tweets.
Right. I'll take the first one. The gentleman that asked what has happened to the several MOUs that the president has signed in his various travels. Now, I think the MOUs that the president has signed has really yielded their fruits. It has unlocked billions of dollars for infrastructure development, and I'm talking in particular about the MOU we signed in South Africa with the Chinese, and when he went to China. And it is as a result of that we have the Exim Bank loan, with which we are now, doing the railway. Now, part of the MOU we signed, with Morocco in particular, I've explained, that is what has now led to the crash in the price of fertilizer and huge savings for us. Part of the MOU we signed, the president signed when he went to UK in May, has led to the world agreeing to set up a global forum to retrieve stolen money for us. And as this year, we're expecting Switzerland to return $320 million of those stolen funds. Part of the MOUs they have signed has resulted, at least with the UAE, has now resulted in making it easier for us to repatriate funds. We are also expecting funds from Jersey and from the US. So, Mr. President's trips have really, really unlocked, billions of naira for our development. Now, there's the issue of bills. We hope that the National Assembly will sign into law whatever, will pass whatever bills before them. But when we talk about job creation, you see, don't look at job creation just from the former, perspective. Look at job creation from the exponential effect that we have this agricultural revolution today in Jigawa, in Ebonyi, in Imo, in Anambra, in Kebbi, in Kano, in Sokoto, and you can't believe the millions of jobs that are created just through this, this revolution. The gentleman spoke about what is happening to the school children that are kidnapped, and I can assure you, federal government is very, very much on it. I think those are the questions that.
All right, yeah, but those are the key questions that they have come by way of tweets. Honourable Minister, we are pressed for time now. The other last question would have been on exactly the level of cooperation you are getting from foreign governments with regard to repatriating funds that were stashed in those countries. But you already talked about Switzerland,
yes,
Jersey, and several others. But we hope there will be another opportunity to deal with that in terms of repatriation with another discussion on this segment. Right now, we're taking a short break, but we still have with us the Honourable Minister. When we come back, all right, we're not taking a short break. Rather, we are going straight away into a background report with regard to the creative industry, taking a look at it in the last 2 years. Kirian.
All right, now with the potential that's helped grow some of the top economies of the world, the creative industry and the tourism sector, if properly harnessed, can be the alternative to the diversification plans of the Buhari administration. To help us better understand the point of views from both sectors, here is Omotola with a backgrounder.
Tourism and creative industries in Nigeria have often been described as sectors with huge potentials for revenue generation. Nollywood, as an arm of the creative industry, was declared the second contributor to Nigeria's GDP after crude oil in 2014, with a net worth of $5.1 billion and contributed 1.2% to GDP. The industry by the end of 2016 was also said to have grossed $1 billion. Underestimated most times in terms of revenue generation, the hospitality and tourism sector, according to an online travel agency, Jumia, reports that the sector contributed some 4.8% to Nigeria's GDP in 2016 alone. The music entertainment industry is one that Nigeria has continued to see its rise in leaps and bounds. These outcomes indeed are proofs to the fact that with political will and financial backing, the sector can do better. Topping the list of challenges faced by these sectors is funding and proper administration. To this end, practitioners have called for placing of square pegs in square holes to help build strong institutions, and observers want adequate provision made for the sector in the budget. There are also several calls for legislations that aid industry regulation, give punitive actions to acts of piracy in the creative industry, and give grants and tax breaks to practitioners in the creative industry. Though there have been several engagements by the federal government with practitioners in the sectors, there are calls for closer relations that are about results. How has this administration harnessed the potentials of these sectors for economic gains? Join us on Good Morning Nigeria as we look at this and more.
All right, thank you very much there, Omotola, for that background report. Of course, in addition to the Honourable Minister of Information and Culture, Olajilai Mohammed, who's here with us here in the studios. We have been joined now by other guests to discuss aspects of the creative industry and what is needed to upscale its contribution to the country's gross domestic product. At this time, we'd like to welcome the Artistic Director of the National Theatre and the National Troupe of Nigeria, Ta Uku. Of course, when you see him, he's a cultural item himself. Ta Uku,
thank you, Casey.
And we have two other persons in our Lagos, one person in our Lagos studio. That's Fidelis Duka, a Nollywood filmmaker. And we're also expecting... all right, now we have the filmmaker here with us. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Come on.
All right, I hope he can hear us clearly in Lagos there. All right, gentlemen, you're welcome to the second segment of today's conversation on Good Morning Nigeria. I'd like to begin with you, Uko. You are the artistic director of the National Troupe and, of course, the National Theatre. Of course, National Theatre is a good old story. It's a place that Nigerians have converged over the years to, celebrate their cultural activities and all that. Now, what has happened to that edifice?
Well, the National Theatre was set up in preparation for Festa between 1975 to 1977. It was completed during the military regime of General Olusegun Obasanjo. And it was designed as a theater really for a temperate country, but brought to Nigeria at that time. Remember that area of Igomu was quite a forest area. It wasn't as developed as it is today. And it's a replica of the National Theatre of Bulgaria, Sofia. So it was designed in the best tradition of indoor entertainment centers in the world. Now, what's happening to it today is like so many things in Nigeria, lack of maintenance. It remains, as I'm saying today, the best artistic and iconic design for indoor entertainment in Nigeria.
Well, we may return to that,
yes.
But our arts and culture sector contributed immensely to the rebasing of Nigeria's economy. Now, what is the current situation now, 2 years in this administration, from your perspective as a culturalist?
Well, the 2 years is a long journey. It's a long journey, and it could be a short journey depending on the context you want to apply your journey perspectives. For Nigeria and the present administration, rebasing the economy is looking at cultural imperatives. What can we do to add value to the general economic development of Nigeria in the areas of culture? You have the performing arts, the cinematic industry, the creative industry in Nollywood, Kannywood, Yoruba films, and theater generally is coming back in terms of practitioners getting engaged in productions. However, the economic downturn also affects the output both in quality and quantity of productions. However, you still find that for Nigerian entrepreneurs in the cultural industry, the dominance of Nollywood as a major part of resource generation remains the principal area. But you have things like the creative industries in the area of textiles, traditional textiles. I'm wearing one of such from Owo. And you have lots of traditional fabrication of cultural works of art, which in themselves are part of what helps to live in and create livelihoods for the creative industry in Nigeria, and hence potentials for export.
All right, Tauku, thank you very much. We'll return to you later in the course of the conversation. Now, let's bring the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture back into the conversation with regard to the creative industry. I mean, quite clearly, there's a recognition of the rise and growth of the creative industry in Nigeria, but a lot more still needs to be done with regard to revamping that particular sector. 2 years on, what is it that you found? Of course, you've been in office since November 2015. What is it the administration has identified, as the key catalyst for sustaining the creative industry as well as ensuring its continued growth?
Thank you very much. You see, when the government decided to diversify its economy. Even though most people will look at only agriculture and the solid mineral, but actually the creative industry is one area also where the government has put a lot of emphasis. And our objective is to ensure that the creative industry contributes up to 5% to the GDP from its less than 2% today. And when we talk about the creative industry, what are we talking about? We're talking about the film industry, talking about music, talking about advertising, talking about, we're talking about advertising. We're also talking about, sorry, I'm talking about advertising, I'm talking about music, about film, fashion, and the like. And what we have done as a government in the last 2 years is to identify those challenges that this industry is facing and address them. And that is why we've succeeded. We identified lack of capacity, for instance, as one of the major drawbacks. And to this end, we succeeded in getting an MOU signed between us and the British Council, which has resulted in the training today of 40 festival managers all over Nigeria. These managers have been trained to look at festivals not just as leisure but as business. And they are now in the process of being attached to other major festivals all over the world. Because the important thing about festival is that you must be able to create an audience, you must be able to create a market, you must be able to make it, viable. Two, we've signed another MOU with the Tony Alumelu Foundation, which has led to the creation of what is called the Task Force on Creative Economy. And this is to provide, easy access of funds to people in the creative industry. We've also succeeded in having a relationship between the UNWTO and the CNN, which is going to result in we leveraging on the film industry to invite people into Nigeria. You see, we realize that we cannot compete with the big five in Africa. I'm talking about South Africa, I'm talking about Kenya, I'm talking about Morocco, I'm talking about Egypt in terms of destination because of lack of infrastructure. However, we have this unique advantage, competitive advantage in the film industry, in our music. Now, what we intend to do with this in agreement with the CNN and UNWTO, which is the United Nations World Tourism Organization, is to ensure that we use the film industry to let the world know how Nigerians live, to showcase our culture, showcase our ways of life, and that is going to attract people to Nigeria. And just this morning, I was talking to Ken, and Ken gave me the good news. For instance, that AFEC, which is the African Film and Entertainment Collective, is also ready to work with the Nollywood in Nigeria to improve on content, improve in cinema, in the industry. We also realized too that one of the major challenges we face is lack of infrastructure. I'm not talking just about power or water. I'm talking about infrastructure such as theaters, such as film houses. For instance, when there were no film houses in Nigeria, and Ken is going to talk about this, no matter how good a film you make, you can only gross maximum 20 million naira. Because in that time, Alaba or Onitsha and the Idumota will determine how much money you make from your films. But you can see that with just about 30 film houses today in Nigeria, 2 films in Nigeria made 450 million naira last year each. That's the Wedding Party, and I think it's the Wedding Party, and I think 76. I'm not sure of the second one. Which means that the more film houses you have, the more money for the film owner. So we are now working with HC Capital to build at least 20 more community film malls.
Who is driving this? Is it a government initiative or private sector?
It's private sector initiative with state governments. Okay. Now, again, we realized another major challenge that is being faced by the creative industry, really film and music, is the issue of piracy.
Honourable Minister, we'll come to piracy because that's a big issue, by the way. Let's return to our Lagos network studios just to indicate, that we have two guests with us. You've seen them on the screen already. That to the right side of your split screen, Fidel is Doka, who is a filmmaker, and then Kene Baro, who is managing director of Film House Cinemas around the country. Gentlemen, I would like to once again welcome you to our conversation. Now, let's get your take on what has happened or what is happening, in the last 2 years that we have had the current administration. I'm sure that, of course, Nigerians are familiar with some promise that was made in the past about, is it 200 million or so to Nollywood? There were all kinds of issues arising from all of that. What kind of direction are you getting now in terms of government seeking to aid the creative industry, particularly from your perspective? Gentlemen, take it one after the other.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having us. I think what's really happened in the last few years, it's that private sectors pretty much driven where we are up till now, the creative and entertainment industry. But in the last few years, what we're seeing and what has happened is that close connection. Government is now recognizing, not just theoretically, but recognizing properly, and the creative industry, and the business side of creative industry. Before now, the creative industry and entertainment industry has always been seen as something that just entertains people. But I think the business side of it is now beginning to take preeminence in that conversation and in that dealing with government. And what we're finding now is it's sparking a lot of, from the funding side of things, the $200 million that you mentioned, Bank of Industry, Nexim Bank, it's also stimulating a lot of commercial banks to fund the industry. There's also the Project Act Fund, which is free money to the industry that helped capacity development, production, and now distribution. So all these things are beginning to work, and people are seeing a lot more private sector organizations are beginning to now get involved. We're seeing a huge explosion of different platforms where people can consume. So the consumption of the creative products is growing as well. So VOD platforms, Netflix switched on, Iroko commissioning films, a whole lot of film production happening, and the demand for content is huge as well. So the snowballing effect, which means that so many people, labor force as well, is growing. People getting more and more involved in film content production. So I think that spark has been seen so much, and for me personally, I think the discussion, particularly with government, is no longer creative industry as just entertainment, but it's creative industry as business, and that's what's making a huge difference.
I think I'll take it from there. Essentially, what Kenny has just said is the truth. I think this government has shown some level of commitment to this industry in the last 2 years. I think even the Honourable Minister, when he came in, started running than walking when he came in. We must commend the government for that. I think, like he mentioned, looking at the business of this industry so far, the government has shown genuine interest. In the last 2 years, we'll say that looking at even structures, the government came up with the idea of instituting the Mobicon bill. I think a committee was set up by the government, and the industry sat down. I think we went around the country, people brought in their contributions to that document. The bill is before the Honourable Minister now. We expect that it should get to the FEC. So I think that's one area. Another area is in, like the Minister mentioned too, looking at the industry. People should begin to realize that the creative sector is not only about entertainment. It's a business. That's why I was very happy when the Minister said 2 films made over 450 million. From our own estimates, it's even more than that, and it can be more than that if you look at the other number of films that were made in the last 2 years. Government must begin to realize that if you want to diversify the economy, you must look at this sector and the entire ecosystem, from tourism, culture, must begin to work together. What we found out in the last 50 years of 7 of our independence is that these agents of government, from the tourism sector to culture, they don't work at close opposites. You see the tourism sector working on its own, and then you see the culture sector working on its own. But thank God what we have today, we want to have a system where all the sectors must work together. Nollywood cannot work without music. Neither can the fashion industry work without Nollywood. Neither can music work without fashion. So if we be, and for the art sector, even the paintings, the painters, like Tauko mentioned earlier. So I think the entire ecosystem will begin to work together where we all begin to contribute genuinely. But beyond that, I also feel importantly that government must begin to realize that this sector is very important. I'm happy that even the last government came up with the Project Art project, but this government completed this. I know about sometime last year, a couple of, early this year, filmmakers were given funding to begin distribution platforms. I think that alone shows that the government is really committed to supporting this sector. And I'm aware that even that project is in the new budget by the minister. So I think we have fared very well. And interestingly, like Kene mentioned earlier, this is the only sector that didn't go into a recession. And that is a pointer that there's a lot you can benefit from this sector if given the proper attention.
Right, Fidelis, thank you very much for that analysis. You believe there's a symbiotic relationship, between arts, culture, creative industry, fashion, music, and what have you. But I'd like to get back to Kene once more. Now, talking about film houses, you're a director of film house. Now, my concern is on the infrastructure required to step up what you are doing from where you are now to a higher level. So what's the situation of infrastructure of this sector in Nigeria today, and what's the way moving forward with respect to infrastructure development for the film industry?
I think this is very critical to Nigerian filmmakers, infrastructure, particularly cinemas have shown that they're huge and very important revenue-generating platform for filmmakers. Last year alone, from cinema ticket sales, out of 3.5 billion naira generated in cinema box office, Nigerian films generated about 1.2 billion of those. So it's crucial. And what's happening now, particularly with Bank of Industry set up a fund that's supporting practically all cinema chains in Nigeria, to set up and roll out more. Community cinemas are coming out now. Some states are even looking at setting up cinemas across, I think, Lagos State and Anambra State, looking to set up cinemas across the states, because that is the critical factor there. It's very transparent in cinema in terms of the box office coming in, the numbers, the revenues generated there. So once we can get that right, you can see that cinemas will then need content, and we're finding now that Nigerian films are becoming very, very critical, very important for cinemas. And as we move out from the bigger cities into the smaller cities and smaller towns, you will find that cinemas will start playing 90% Nigerian films in them. So it is key. And interestingly, because of what's happened with government and government banks, a lot of the commercial banks have been stimulated to actually help support this industry, and they're making available funds. I know FCMB, Fidelity Bank, Heritage Bank, they've also funded cinema development. So I think that's a critical part of the change that's happened and is happening.
Kene, thank you very much there for your comments. Now, just to respond to one of the issues touched on, of course, on our side by Fidelis, he indicated that the creative industry was one sector of the economy that didn't go into a recession. Agric, of course, is not in recession and hasn't been in recession. Throw into that also the solid minerals subsector, which is just now crawling out of its arrested development. Let's return to our guests with us here in the Abuja studios. Honorable Minister, earlier you talked about the task force on the creative economy. What is the mandate of that task force, and what has it achieved so far? What are the prospects?
You see, the idea of a task force on creative economy came about when we realized that we need to transit from the creative industry to a creative economy, and that it takes much more than just creativity for you to have a creative economy. That today, the creative industry also needs, the close collaboration with the private sector. Today, the creative, talent needs IT. It needs intellectual property lawyers. it needs investors, it needs accountants. So we have now put together this team, which is made up of largely, film directors, music producers, artists, but at the same time, they now have lawyers, IP lawyers who are there. They have IT specialists who are members of the creative industry. They have bankers, and then of course you have the regulatory agency. So the idea is to have this, this task force, who to make it easy for the creative industry to have access to funds, to have access to capacity development initiatives, and have access to the latest development in the creative industry worldwide. And so far, what this industry has, what this task force has achieved is that we are putting together an international conference between the 17th and 18th of July on financing television, music, TV, and film, television, and music, because this is the way forward. We must stop seeing the creative industry as simply entertainment. They are big businesses. And in doing this, I'm happy that Ken is there. We are working closely together with the industry. At that 2 days international conference, we are going to discuss all issues, such as, financing the industry, issues such as, IP, international, how do we protect intellectual property, distribution, and the like. So this is the kind of thing that this government has done. And like Felix has said, we have also put together MOPICON. MOPICON is the Motion Picture Council of, Nigeria, which is going to regulate the industry. But that regulation is coming from the members of the industry and not from.
That's why we have self-regulation.
All right, let's go to UCO once more. The sustainability of a functional, cultural sector is predicated on training. For instance, are the training institutions for practitioners or intending practitioners in the country adequate, in terms of personnel and, of course, equipment?
Well, the training capacity of institutions is determined by also the infrastructure. At the same time, professionals who themselves know that business. For instance, a succession plan. If you take our football, for instance, in the past, you find Super Eagles or our football team, when they go out of Nigeria, the best are snapped up by international clubs. And we come back again to rebuild and start all over. But how did they respond to that? The sports administrators and that industry started to have their own local derby, and now you have our national league in soccer. So there's a succession plan of also bringing younger ones to take over from the older ones who either exit the stage or go to higher lucrative professional climbs. Now for culture, I think the solution is a sustainability approach that takes care of the local government base. All structures of culture reside in the ethnic nationalities. In the end, if you want to reach the Urobo people, you must go to where they live. If you want to reach the Gwari or the Gbagi, you go to where they live. The Tiv, you go to where they live. So if there is a deliberate attempt, which is what we want to do now at the direction of the national troop, is to go to the cultures of the people at the local level, develop their structures and work with local government councils, work with state governments, individual royal palaces are the citadels of culture. Work with our kings, traditional rulers. They are the ones who will give you all the gamut of historical archives that you need to turn into commodities that will bring profit. I think, therefore, that a part of the challenge is for government to link up with the structures at the traditional level of script writing. If you see a film, a Hollywood film, with a New York Police Department, the New York Police Department gives out some money to the producers to tell a good story of their side. The colonial times, we used the mobile film industry the mobile vans were used to disseminate information and show films. So I think for Nigerian filmmaking too, it's also get the local industries in cultural productions. Those who make adire, those who make batik, those who weave cloth. Let us write stories that will go into this.
Sorry to interject.
Yeah.
The minister talked earlier about the British Council assisting with the training of festival managers.
Yes.
Now, on the basis of what you have also said, so going to the subnational governments, particularly now the local governments and the traditional institutions to get, as it were, into the pith of the cultural things, how much of a game changer is this likely to be? Festival managers, and then you go into the roots, as it were, to exhume, the cultural aspects of our people, and then put them on festivals that Nigerians will attend, and then you have a boon to the creative economy.
Today we have social media, we have television platforms, we have international satellite system. We are digitalizing now, so content becomes a problem. You must have enough content to satisfy the international market. You can stay from anywhere in the world and see festivals in Nigeria. And if you want some of those exhibitions, those cultural expressions, you can now get in touch with the authorities at the base level and say, we want this. So it is a synergy now between international markets, understanding the needs of the international market, adapting what you have locally to go out there and make capital out of what you have. But most importantly, keying into, for instance, cockcrow at dawn during the Shagari era, it was a government-stimulated production.
Agriculture.
So if today agriculture is our focus in terms of diversification, the cultural industries, the solid minerals industries, get movie producers to write good stories that bring up the vicissitudes of climate change, global warming, and environmental degradation. And we tell a story on illegal mining. And if you do this and you tell a very beautiful story.
Now, before you go further, tell us what is being done to revive the national troupe on the national theatre. Just in a minute.
I told you of the sustainability theory here. If you do not have a succession plan, most of these dancers, as they grow older, can no longer do these dances like before. So you are not going to keep a few people in Lagos and tell them to learn 1,000 dances. Nigeria has the largest number of ethnic dances in the world. The team alone have over 1,500 dances.
So that's the question I was asking. How does this gel with the idea of festival managers?
Yes. May I just comment? I just tap.
What the question is for him.
You see, there's no conflict between what Comrade Uko is saying, which is culture is local.
Yes.
And what we are saying, that we must train our festival managers. Now, it is precisely because we see culture, we see the creative industry more as leisure and entertainment, but not as business. And that is why it's necessary for us to train these festival managers who would use the local content, but build it into a business. Okay. That's exactly what he's saying. Now, take for instance our festivals, either the Oshun Festival or your masquerade. You see, two things are lacking. One, we have not succeeded even in mastering crowd control. We've not succeeded in building this into a economic model that will make it, be economically viable. So these managers are now trained. They are attached to Nottingham Festival, they are attached to Bayern Festival, they are attached to a carnival all over the world, and they now study the technical and management aspect of festivals as opposed solely to the entertainment aspect of festival.
All right, thank you, Honorable Minister. Now we go back to Lagos, to Kene and Fidelis for their final comments. Let's take it one after the other, please.
Yes. Let me just quickly respond to the issue of the festivals that the minister mentioned. I think it's important that we begin to understand that the festivals are not just culture, not just entertainment, it's business. Just 2 days ago, the Cannes Film Festival ended in the city of Cannes. and millions, like Mr. said, millions and millions of dollars were made. In a couple of weeks, they will announce what they have made. I've been attending festival. I run a film festival in Abuja, and the whole idea of the film festival, I told everybody that our photography is a business. It is not for entertainment per se. Yes, you entertain, but the business aspect of the festival must be identified. And that is why it's important that we begin to see this industry as not just entertainment. It's business. If we can contribute from one film over 450 million naira, you can imagine what 200 films will do. And that's why I must commend the minister for saying that at this point in time, we must begin to see this sector as business. First, business. And that is why, of course, look at Hollywood, the 7th largest economy in the world. California is just a city in the US, but that city controls the 7th largest economy in the world. So when you look at all these indices, you begin to understand that it's important that the creative industry, I keep saying, there must be a link between all these sectors. I'm happy that I can mention earlier that the financial institutions are now considering establishing more cinemas. And the moment we have more cinemas in Nigeria, talk about 1,000 cinemas, you will begin to see the kind of growth we want in that sector. Thank you.
Just for me, I think something else that's happening from the government engagement with industry is because they're making the private sector a bit far more comfortable, particularly the foreign investors. And like the Honorable Minister mentioned earlier in our conversation, the group African Film Entertainment Collective out of Hollywood, LA, they're looking to invest up to $400 million in Nigeria in the next 3 years, over the next 3 years. And why are they doing this? Because there's a lot more confidence. They're seeing what government is doing in Nigeria in terms of enabling environment, policy, focus on the policy. And one very critical thing that happened, particularly in the film industry from this government, is they listened to the practitioners. They listened to us, and made changes within the regulatory bodies, Censors Board and the NFC, and we're beginning to see a lot of the benefits, So I think this is just a spark, a stimulus, all the positive thing that happened in the GDP as far as the creative industry is concerned is only a stimulus. Fantastic. But watch what will happen next year and beyond.
All right, Kenan Baru, Managing Director of Film House Cinemas, and Fidelis Doka, that's a Nollywood filmmaker. Gentlemen, you joined us from our Lagos Network studios. We'd like to appreciate your participation in our discussion this morning. All right, and then back to our Abuja studios. We're pressed for time now. We have barely a couple of minutes left to take our complimentary segments. We'd like to appreciate the Artistic Director of the National Theatre and the National Troupe of Nigeria, Ta Oko. You made a number of points. I'm sure you have the opportunity of elaborating on those points with regard to content and scripting to bring out our cultural values. Thanks again for being here with us.
Thank you.
And then we also would like to appreciate the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture. We had him on the double take. First segment, of course, we're discussing the Buhari administration, 2 years and 2 days on, and of course he's also participated now in our conversation. We couldn't get back to piracy, big issue. I'm sure there will be another opportunity to talk about that. Honorable Minister, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break. When we return, the curtains will fall.
Admission forms for the 2017-2018 academic session of NTA Television College JAWS into its diploma programs are now on sale. The diploma programs are in film and TV production, broadcast journalism, and TV engineering technology. Applicants are required to have at least 5 credits, including English language and mathematics at SSC, NECO, or GCO levels in not more than 1 sitting. Application forms can be obtained from the TV College Refi JAWS or at any NTA zonal centers nationwide on payment of a non-refundable fee of 7,500 naira in bank draft in favor of NTA Television College. Completed application forms should be returned to the office of the academic secretary, NTA Television College, or the center of purchase on or before 28th of July 2017. For further inquiries, please call 0806 980 9807 or 0703 660 7155. NTA Television College, training you to be the best you can be.
TV Guide magazine is out with fabulous Fab Funke Akindele Bello, aka Jennifer, adorning the cover. She opens a secret not known even to her family. Find out the secret. NTA turns 40 this year. The challenges, the emerging trends in broadcasting, and the way forward. Weekend Dealer 2. Meet the team behind the biggest deal on NTA. Is food still the way to a man's heart? If not, what else? This edition is hot and juicy. Meet your star faces on screen. Entertainment, fashion, young minds, social media, and great personality.
This is idiosyncratic and heterodox.
Yes, Professor John Bull is on the radar. Find out what makes this program the rave of the moment on NTA Network. And for the prof,
over and out.
TV Guide. Ask your vendors or book your copy at every NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, still your indispensable companion.
And weather forecast is next as we